Hey everyone. Tonight, let's get comfortable. Lower the lights a little. Maybe pull the blanket up just enough so your feet don't feel existentially exposed. Tonight, we're drifting back to the Middle Ages. A time before central heating. Before double-glazed windows. Before anyone had the radical idea that maybe houses should keep the weather out. Specifically, we're talking about medieval winters. Long, dark, cold in ways that felt personal. Because while we often imagine medieval kings and queens wrapped in velvet, seated near roaring fires, the reality was less cozy. Much less. Winter did not care about your crown. It did not respect your divine right to rule. And it certainly did not care that your bloodline had been carefully ruined through generations of strategic cousin marriages. So let's ease into it. Slowly, calmly, and a little frostbitten. In the medieval world, winter was not a season. It was an endurance test. A long, gray corridor of time where everything hurt a little more than usual. For peasants, winter meant hunger, sickness, and the very real possibility of not making it to spring. For royalty, winter meant hunger, sickness, and the very real possibility of not making it to spring, but with nicer titles. Castles, despite their dramatic silhouettes and intimidating walls, were basically stone refrigerators. They were designed to keep enemies out, not warmth in. Stone absorbs cold beautifully. It holds on to it, cherishes it, shares it generously with everyone inside. You could light fires, of course. And they did. Constantly. But medieval fireplaces were less about heating rooms and more about gently reminding you what warmth used to feel like. Smoke drifted everywhere. Eyes watered. Lungs complained. And drafts slipped through arrow slits, cracks, and poorly fitted doors like uninvited ghosts. Even kings slept cold. Especially kings. Beds were heavy wooden frames with ropes instead of springs. Mattresses were sacks of straw, feathers, or whatever vaguely soft thing was available. These mattresses absorbed moisture like a sponge, which in winter meant damp. Always damp. Blankets existed, but not in the comforting, plush way we think of them today. They were coarse, scratchy, and usually smelled faintly of smoke, mildew, and generational disappointment. Now imagine being a medieval monarch. You've been told since birth that God personally appointed you, that your touch can cure disease, that your blood is sacred, and yet here you are, shivering, teeth chattering, wearing 6 layers of wool, and still feeling like a neglected turnip in a cellar. Naturally, they handled this poorly. Let's drift gently toward medieval England, a land particularly skilled at being cold, wet, and morally exhausting. English winters were brutal not because of extreme temperatures, but because of relentless dampness. Cold seeps deeper when it's wet. It gets into bones, into joints, into whatever fragile royal immune system had been cobbled together from centuries of intermarriage. Take Henry III, for example. A king whose reign was long, expensive, and deeply unimpressive. Henry was chronically ill. He suffered from fevers, stomach problems, and what contemporaries politely described as a delicate constitution. In winter, Henry retreated indoors, surrounded by tapestries. Not because they were decorative, though they were, but because they acted as insulation. Walls were literally draped in fabric to stop the cold stone from leaching warmth away. It worked a little. Not much. Henry also insisted on constant fires. So many fires, in fact, that parts of the palace became hazy with smoke. Courtiers coughed politely while trying not to pass out, which, to be fair, was standard medieval etiquette. And then there was his son, Edward I. Tall, severe, nicknamed Longshanks. A man who looked like he had been carved directly from the concept of stubbornness. Edward campaigned relentlessly, including during winter, which meant long marches through frozen mud, icy rain, and landscapes that seemed actively hostile. Winter warfare was miserable. Armor grew heavy with moisture. Leather stiffened. Fingers went numb. And morale quietly died somewhere around the second week of cold porridge. Kings did this anyway. Because kings were nothing if not committed to bad ideas. Now let's float gently over to France. A place where medieval winters were just cold enough to ruin your mood permanently. French monarchs loved luxury. They adored silk, jewels, elaborate clothing. Unfortunately, silk does not care if you are cold. Take Charles VI of France, known as Charles the Mad, which is never a promising title. Charles suffered from severe mental illness, likely worsened by stress, illness, and yes, winter conditions. Cold, dark months aggravated his paranoia and hallucinations. During one winter episode, Charles became convinced he was made of glass. He refused to move, fearing he would shatter. Courtiers padded his clothes with reinforced fabric, which helped emotionally, if not medically. And all of this unfolded in drafty palaces where cold winds whispered through corridors at night. It's hard to maintain mental stability when your castle sounds like it's quietly judging you. Winters also meant disease. Always disease. The cold drove people indoors. Rooms filled with bodies, smoke, animals, and stagnant air. Ventilation was optimistic at best. Respiratory infections thrived. So did tuberculosis. And dysentery, because medieval sanitation was a philosophical concept rather than a practice. Royal children were particularly vulnerable. Born into privilege, yes, but also into fragile bodies shaped by limited genetic diversity. Many royal infants didn't survive their first winter. Those who did often carried lingering illnesses for life. A sickly child prince wrapped in furs, staring out at frost-covered courtyards, was not uncommon. Neither was the quiet panic of dynasties watching their only heir cough through January. Let's drift now toward the Holy Roman Empire, a region that managed to be politically chaotic and extremely cold at the same time. German winters were harsh. Snow piled up. Rivers froze. Travel slowed to a crawl. Emperor Frederick II, a brilliant and deeply strange man, despised the cold. He preferred Sicily, where winters were mild and tolerable. Whenever possible, he simply left colder regions behind. This was an underrated survival strategy. But many emperors didn't have that luxury. They held court in icy halls, wearing layers of fur and wool, while trying to appear authoritative as their fingers slowly went numb. Writing was difficult. Ink froze. Documents cracked. Even seals, the literal symbols of authority, became brittle in the cold. Winter attacked governance itself. Food shortages were another quiet horror. Harvests ended in autumn. By winter, stores were dwindling. If the previous harvest was poor, winter became terrifying. Even royal tables felt the strain. Fresh food vanished. Meals relied on salted meat, dried grains, and whatever hadn't rotted yet. Vitamin deficiencies set in. Scurvy wasn't just for sailors. It crept through castles too, disguised as fatigue and bleeding gums. And yet, royal feasts continued. Because denial is easier with silverware. Courts hosted winter celebrations, not because people felt festive, but because they were bored, cold, and desperate for distraction. Music echoed through halls. Candles flickered. Guests pretended they weren't uncomfortable. And outside, snow fell silently. Let's pause here for a moment. Take a breath. Feel how quiet winter can be. In the medieval world, silence was heavy. No hum of electricity. No distant traffic. Just wind, fire, and the occasional unsettling noise that might have been a rat. Sleep came early, and often poorly. People slept in shifts. They woke in the middle of the night, prayed, talked, stared into the dark. Cold makes sleep shallow, restless. Even kings tossed and turned beneath their heavy blankets, listening to their castles settle and creak. And tomorrow would be just as cold. So as you settle deeper into your bed tonight, remember this. Your walls are warm. Your windows are sealed. Your blanket does not smell like damp straw. And medieval winter is safely far away. We'll drift further into it next time.